Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing the air outside isn't the mix of gases we're used to. It's 100% oxygen. The sky feels sharper, every breath feels richer, but this sudden change would be far more dangerous than it first appears. Normally, Earth's atmosphere is about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and tiny amounts of other gases. That nitrogen isn't just filler, it stabilizes the air. Remove it, and everything changes. At first, breathing pure oxygen would feel energizing. Athletes sometimes train with oxygen-rich air for short bursts, but living in it constantly, that's another story. It could kill us. Too much oxygen damages lungs and eyes. It can cause dizziness, nausea, and eventually seizures. What feels powerful at first quickly becomes poison. But the danger wouldn't stop with humans. Insects would grow much larger. Oxygen fuels their size, and without nitrogen to limit them, they'd thrive. Plants, on the other hand, would suffer. They don't use oxygen to grow. They need carbon dioxide. Without it, photosynthesis would grind to a halt. Animals that rely on plants would start to feel the effects quickly. Ecosystems depend on balance, and without nitrogen and CO2, that balance crumbles fast. But the real terror is fire. In 100% oxygen, flames burn hotter, faster, and deadlier. Even a tiny spark could ignite a massive disaster. Everyday life becomes dangerous. Lighting a stove, striking a lighter, even static electricity from clothing could set off explosions. Even our bodies would be more flammable. Hair, skin oils, clothing, everything burns easier. A single accident could set off catastrophic fires. Hospitals would face chaos. Pure oxygen increases fire risk in medical equipment, and patients on oxygen tanks would be in extreme danger. Factories, power plants, and gas stations would be ticking time bombs. Any spark could trigger explosions strong enough to wipe out entire neighborhoods. Air travel would come to a halt. Jet engines rely on controlled combustion, but in pure oxygen, they'd burn out of control and risk mid-air explosions. Car engines would suffer too. The combustion inside would become unstable, causing vehicles to stall, overheat, or even explode. Even metals would behave differently. Iron and steel could rust almost instantly, turning strong buildings into fragile shells in just days. Water itself would change. Pure oxygen in the atmosphere would increase oxidation in lakes and rivers, killing off aquatic life within days. Lightning storms would be catastrophic. In pure oxygen, every strike would ignite massive wildfires across forests and grasslands. Astronauts know this danger well. NASA learned from the Apollo 3 tragedy in 1967, when a pure oxygen cabin caused a deadly fire during a ground test. If this lasted for a whole week, cities might not survive. Fires, collapsing infrastructure, and collapsing food chains would push humanity into a crisis. After 7 days, humanity would face massive losses. Only underground shelters or controlled environments could provide safety from this oxygen nightmare. Animals would suffer too. Insects, birds, and mammals would experience oxygen toxicity, damaging lungs and nervous systems within days. Fires wouldn't just spread faster, they'd be nearly impossible to stop. Firefighters spraying water would see flames grow instead of shrink. Entire forests would vanish in hours. Flames would consume trees, soil, and even underground roots, leaving only scorched wastelands. Humans breathing pure oxygen for too long would risk oxygen poisoning, causing dizziness, seizures, and even lung failure. Hospitals would overflow with patients experiencing oxygen toxicity, while medical supplies dwindled rapidly under demand. Even electronic devices could fail. Increased oxidation would corrode delicate circuits, shutting down phones, computers, and satellites. Ocean life would collapse weekly. Coral reefs, fish, and plankton would die as oxygen disrupted delicate marine ecosystems. Oceans would lose their balance. Without nitrogen in the air, natural nutrient cycles would collapse, starving ecosystems of key elements. The sky itself would change color. Without nitrogen scattering light, the daytime sky might appear a dark, eerie green. Every breath would feel strange. Instead of the crisp balance of air we're used to, breathing pure oxygen would feel heavy, almost suffocating. Matches, sparks, even static electricity from clothing couldn't ignite fires instantly. Everyday life would feel like living in a giant powder keg. Airplanes would become unsafe. Engines built for normal air would overheat or explode in pure oxygen. Flights worldwide would be grounded. Cars would face issues too. Engines would burn fuel too quickly, risking explosions or fires on the roads. Even food storage would change. Oxygen-rich air would spoil food almost instantly, as bacteria thrived in the hyper-oxidized environment. Electronics stored indoors would corrode quickly, with metal wires rusting in days instead of years. Civilization would grind to a halt. Outdoor monuments, bridges, and skyscrapers would rust at terrifying speed, threatening collapses within days. Ships at sea would corrode, their hulls eaten away by rust faster than crews could repair them. Military weapons and vehicles would malfunction too. Tanks, planes, and guns would jam or corrode, making wars impossible to fight. Economies would collapse. Factories couldn't operate. Trade would freeze, and entire nations would struggle for survival. Daily life would feel apocalyptic. The once familiar world would be filled with rust, fire, and suffocating air. Hospitals would overflow, with oxygen-fed fires and accidents would send burn victims and patients with lung injuries flooding emergency rooms. Emergency workers would struggle too, as oxygen-fed fires burned hotter and faster than water or foam could control. The natural world would look alien. Forests could ignite from a single lightning strike, turning landscapes into seas of fire. Cities too would be vulnerable. A single spark in a gas line could wipe out entire neighborhoods. Psychologically, humanity would live in fear. Every breath, every flame, every spark would feel like a death sentence. Religion and culture might interpret the oxygen week as a divine test or apocalyptic sign, sparking mass gatherings, prayers, or panic. Space agencies would study the event, recording how an oxygen-rich Earth transforms ecosystems, climates, and technology in real time. As the week ended, the return of normal air would bring immense relief, even though the damage would remain. People would value normal air like never before. Oxygen, once invisible, would become a symbol of balance and survival. The story of a week of pure oxygen would become a lasting reminder. Too much of even a good thing can destroy the very world we depend on.